Hello, everyone. It's Nicholas. How are you? First of all, I want to say greetings to everybody out there on YouTube, my Patreon members, all that. You've been following me the last 3 weeks here while I've been in Australia. It's been a fantastic trip, and I've been running into certain people and colleagues, other astrologers. One being
Marc Laurenson.
Mark. How are you today?
I'm really well, Nicholas. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for having me on.
Yeah, Mark, I actually been following you online through running other social media accounts. For those watching, they know I was running the ESAR accounts for a while and other things, and I would follow you. But this is the first time we met in person here.
Yeah,
in the last several weeks.
at the FAA conference.
Yeah, we stopped by and we have found ourselves here in front of the camera. So
Funny about that.
yeah, it's funny, yeah, and at least on this video today, you and I were talking about certain things to discuss, and one of the main things that came up were the lunar nodes and where they are currently.
Yeah.
And North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo. Yeah.
Just changed sign. So when they do change sign, the energy shifts. But the interesting thing about the nodal energy is it's subtle. It's really, really subtle. It's not like a planetary energy that shifts. Planetary energies are much, much stronger because they're more physical. A nodal energy feels almost like an emotional backdrop of what's going on in your life. So it feels like it's there, it's happening on a subterranean level, but it feels like it is playing in support with everything else that's going on. But at the same time, the nuance of it all still permeates with what we're going through. So it's changed from Aries-Libra. Aries-Libra, we're talking about me and other people. We're talking about fire and air. And it's going into a completely different dynamic now. It's going down to Pisces Libra. And so, it's going down to Pisces and Virgo. So we're talking about earth and water. We're talking about a much more internal kind of energy. And it's a mutable energy too. So there's more movement happening here as well. But Virgo Pisces is more about a feeling of selflessness that needs to come into this. And they both work with it in a totally different way. And the South Node is in Virgo, so there's something about having to let go of the Virgo side of maybe some habitual patterning or some behavior that we want to hold on to, and moving into a much more open, much more flowing, much more kind of endless understanding of possibilities and potentials that we need to allow ourselves to get a little bit more in touch with.
Yes.
So this could happen in many, many different ways for different people in all areas of our lives, of course. And it will be personal. It will be personal to what's going on for you. If you've got planets in Virgo or planets in Pisces, they're definitely going to be feeling it. But also planets in the other mutable signs will feel it as well. But I want to say that this particular energy for us will be big on allowing ourselves to come into a kind of place with ourselves, a softer place, a more sensitive place with ourselves, and getting over the stress or that feeling of always having to be better, or that self-flagellating that we do, that hard stuff we put on ourselves. I've got to do more. I've got to be better. I've got to work harder. I'm never going to get there.
Much of what comes through the Virgo mindset of needing to make things just right, or can I get one more little thing can I make it perfect? Yeah, and
that micromanaging of it all too. The buckling down and having to cross every T and dot every I, and that feeling of, and feeling bad when you don't live up to it, feeling guilty or shameful. I love Virgo. Virgo is a beautiful, beautiful sign when it works well.
Agreed.
It is a sacred, holy sign when it works well. But when it gets tangled up, it really, really gets tangled up. And that's what we have to kind of look at in ourselves, that feeling of never going to get there, or, that feeling of always kind of missing the mark kind of thing. It's hard. It's a hard energy on us. And we're really going to have to, over the next 18 months, have a good look at how we do this to ourselves, and come into, as I said, a softer place where we can release meditate, take long walks in nature, go down by the waterfront.
Yeah.
Everything's okay. Everything's working the way it's supposed to be.
Some people out there, they're gonna microdose their way to this. They're gonna do. There's many different ways to do it. I'm not promoting that, but I think in this current world space, the society, much of which is run on ones and zeros and technology, and I think we all know it in a certain level what happens with time and the tasking. It used to be where you would end your day, you would end a certain space of time and work, and then there would be some other space, and then you would come back the next day. But the way society's come to is every little piece of time you're supposed to be doing something with, and then hence you in your mind, in your head a lot of the time, and how it affects your body, and then the anxiety, nervousness, and then you put that in a space of like it's never right. It come to the place you mentioned about shame and guilt and the inward pyramid that can happen on somebody where they'll dismantle themselves and feel bad. Sometimes, Mark, in situations like this, I as a practitioner with my clients have to think like, I'm thinking sometimes people want to walk out with steps, something they can work with, right? Which is great. But sometimes I have to gauge like maybe it isn't about the steps. Maybe it's about not doing nothing. Because sometimes you set yourself for the steps, like someone in the beginning of the year, like I'm going to work out for the rest of the year, and then you try to do it, and then you fall off, and then someone beats themselves up for not going through, and then they're down in this dark cycle, right? And so, how do you balance that? How do you do that? And so, bring some of the things that you brought up about I would say the letting go. So sometimes you run into Pisces people and you wonder how they survive in the universe. they're like, they just walk out the door and they're literally saying like, the universe will take care of me. And then stuff happens to them. Not all the time, but it does. And I think in one way, the Virgo story can take a little bit of that in our life. It's just how they do it. I would say in one way we want to be careful because sometimes of how we want to say disconnect or how we escape, that's a fine line. And we want to find healthy ways to connect or to touch the divine or that sense of letting go and trusting the mystery, right?
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah.
And, the Virgo-Pisces axis, as I said earlier on, is about service. There is about a sense of leaving the ego at the door and finding ways to be able to give of yourself and help others. Of course, Pisces tries to do it in a compassionate way. It tries to do it with a sense of sensitivity or a sense of heart. Virgo is always the how-to. Yeah. Virgo is rolling up the sleeves, putting on the rubber gloves and, getting into the actual workshop of it all and to be able to do it effectively and efficiently. So it has that involved as well. It's not necessarily about just, going under a tree and meditating for 18 months. There's a little bit of that involved, but it's very much about trying to find a way to bring this energy into your life in a way that other people are going to benefit from. And so your focus needs to be a little bit more outward with this, even though they are sensitive, both are internal signs and relatively sensitive signs. There has to be a feeling of what can I do? How can I express this? How can I put this into some kind of effective work in some kind of way that people are going to benefit from on the level of their heart or the level of healing or the level of changing them, on an emotional level or a feeling level. That's going to come into it in a big way.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, Mark, the approach of it too. And I'm the type of person where this dynamic that you're talking about of service and being outward, we first starts with ourselves, right? And how we serve ourselves and can we give ourselves compassion and forgiveness and love ourselves. And we get used to that pattern. But then there is the natural, I think, as a story as a human to do the same in the world and others. And it's interesting when we talk about something like the nodes. I'm going to go back to how you were explaining the more internal process with the nodes. And for those out there watching, why is that? But in a sense, we're dealing with the moon's nodes, and the moon deals with emotional content, how we get our essential needs met from within here. So just saying that. On the other end, why would these two signs that we're talking about, like serving, they actually have that in common too? It's just like you mentioned, the way that they do it, and it's a lot of times in astrology, or those who are studying in the beginning, you're thinking, oh, that's my opposite sign. Like they're the like opposite, like bad versus good mentality. And it's not actually. I think they need each other and they learn from each other. And in the end, offer a balance. And can you balance the two? And it's interesting when we deal with the moon's nodes, and there's different philosophies in the astrology world, Mark. We have the evolutionary astrology approach. We have a karmic approach. We have other ways of doing it. I come from the way of like the south node, let's say it's in Virgo here, is something we already know.
Yeah.
There's something that's habitual.
Yeah.
Something that we just know front to back. And it serves its purpose in a lot of ways, but because it's habitual, we have a tendency to stay there. And when it's off balance and off kilter, we are on the side that, I don't know how to say this, the more challenging side of it, so on and so forth. And we, in a sense, want to bring in the North Node to help balance that.
That's right.
At least that's how do you think about this,
and that's
Mark?
pretty much the same as the way I think about it too, because the South Node doesn't have to be bad. A lot of people think, oh, the South Node, was a bad thing that you went through or a bad thing that happened, or even, on the level of your personality might have gone through something like that. But, it just is a past energy, and it's an energy from before that you know about. And sometimes you could have been really good at that particular energy. You could have been, if you do have a Virgo South Node in your natal chart, you might have been a really good worker, a really hard worker. You might have won awards for how hard you worked and how well you did, but you put too much cream on that cake. You know what I mean? You would have missed out in life to smell the roses. You would have missed out in life to really connect with something greater than yourself and to be able to understand yourself on a more soulful level or a more spiritual level. Yeah. So it doesn't mean you were bad in that Virgo area. It just means you overemphasized that energy. In some cases, it can be people that really did go through hardship or difficulty. There's a lot of people I know and I've seen, and I've been doing charts for years and years and years, that have particular South Nodes that have memories of war or memories of being in situations where they were powerless or situations where they felt abandoned or locked away. All those kind of things can come into it too. So it's kind of like a mixed bag of a lot of things. It's not a one size fits all.
Right.
So... But, when you're looking at a transiting node, a transiting node is just there for a period of time. And it's going to be going through a part of your chart. Wherever you have Virgo or Pisces is where it's going to be going through. So those particular houses, and of course the transiting nodes go backwards. They reverse. Yeah. So those particular houses are going to get the feel. So, take a good look at the houses that it's transiting through and have a good look at what needs to be released more on the Virgo side of things and more integrated on the Pisces side of things. And as you said, Nicholas, it is a balancing act in the end. It truly is. It's not about throwing out one for the other. It's very much about trying to understand that they both need to work in tandem. And you have to find the best for both of them by probably finding ways to be able to integrate the Pisces energy into a new version of the Virgo energy. That's probably the best way of doing it.
Yeah, I think sometimes too when we're dealing with the nodes and they're like 180 degrees opposite of each other, it's an opposition, but tendency for even in my own chart or client's chart, sometimes when we're doing a certain period of time dealing with it, you kind of live one side a little bit more, right? And then you'll go live the other side and you're just trying to figure it out. And then hopefully you come to this integrative balance place, So speaking of that, like we're recording this in the last 48 hours, there was amazing transits that happened with the moon and Pisces touching Saturn, Venus, Neptune, the North Node in Pisces. We had a Venus-Neptune conjunction earlier, just within hours ago. It's still around. And a lot of this is connected to what we're about to do in the eclipse story. The eclipses that we have coming here in March. We have 2 eclipses. For those out there who are learning, when the eclipses happen, they happen in pairs. There's a new and a full moon, and then they happen in every 6 months in those pairs. So we had some dates here we were going to talk about, I think, here. And I think,
Yeah.
So,
And the eclipses always happen within 18 degrees of the nodal axis.
yes.
So when you have a new moon or a full moon and it's within 18 degrees of the transiting nodes, you're having an eclipse. I was born on an eclipse. I was born on a lunar eclipse, the day of a lunar eclipse. And so, I'm very in tune with eclipses, I think. A lot of people reckon because I was born on one, I'm a little tiny bit more affected by them. I don't know about that because I know a lot of people get affected by eclipses.
Yeah.
But I've got the dates for them here.
Yeah.
So the next lunar one is March 14. So it'll probably be, 13, 14, I imagine, or 14, 15, depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah.
It'll be a 23 Virgo. And that's a lunar eclipse. So it's obviously going to be a south node one. And then we have a solar eclipse 2 weeks later on March 29, probably be 28, 29, depending on where you are in the world. And that's still in Aries. That's 9 degrees of Aries. So it's still kind of in the flavor of Aries. It hasn't quite come out of Aries yet. But the lunar eclipse will be a south node one. The solar eclipse will be a north node one, even though the north node is in Pisces now. But you're getting a feeling now with the eclipses for me and for most people are only really relevant, truly personally, if they're affecting your chart. In other words, if you've got planets anywhere near those degrees by aspect, you're going to get affected by them. A lot of the times eclipses will happen and you'll probably kind of sideswipe them if you really don't have any natal planets in anywhere near those degrees. Okay, so if you've got planets anywhere near 23 Virgo or in aspect to 23 Virgo or 9 Aries or in aspect to 9 Aries, there will be a feeling of possibly something coming to an end and a beginning. I always find that the eclipses have that feeling of something being shadowed and then re-emerged, something being shadowed and then exposed. So there will be a feeling of something coming to a close in some way and then re-emerging in a brand new way.
Yeah, I've come from the philosophy too for, it has to be aspecting your chart. And I think the more specific it is let's say someone has something at 23 degrees mutable, right? I think the story is right there present in front of your world. And and that it plays out. So 6 months later, there's a next chapter in this story per se. And while the nodes are in there, I mean, it's approximately a year and a half overlap, I would say, right? We mentioned here one of these eclipses, even though the nodes are in Pisces-Virgo, it's at 9 degrees Aries. And there's just an overlap that's happening here from the last year and a half of eclipses. So if you're one of these people who were affected by that, those eclipses and Aries and Libra, Mars, it was a Mars-Venus story, right? The remnants are there, and I think that particular eclipse is pretty much cleaning up the story. It's kind of signing the contract. It's over, but it's there, especially, let's say, if you have something in 9 degrees cardinal, one of the cardinal signs.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting how this cycle is. It's actually a lot of what astrology is to me. Is sometimes we talk about data on specific dates, and sometimes it happens around that time. But I think cycles overlap, stories overlap, and I think in this case, we have this old eclipse story that happened in Libra, South Node Libra, North Node Aries, and we have the beginning of the cycle here happening with Pisces North Node and South Node Virgo. So it's always interesting and fascinating to me because of the overlap in stories. And around that time, especially what we're going into here, around that time, we're going to have a Venus retrograde that's going to be involved. That starts in Aries and goes back to Pisces. Mercury's going to do the same thing. Saturn and Neptune will be in Pisces. There's just this Piscean energy that we're coming out of your last 48 hours, and it carries into and I think, in my personal view, because of where Saturn is and where it will have a play in some of this, because Venus has been in Pisces as we are right now, and it already had a meeting with Saturn one time. It's going to happen 2 other times, and a lot of this happens in March during eclipse season. So for me, I think there is a definite redefinition of what Saturn does in all this. Its role in this eclipse season, how it wants to redefine and find the pillars and foundations of whatever it's touching and patch those things up. And that could be very difficult. So it's a reality check depending on the person. If they're not quite there yet with that story, it could be very feel like there's a weight on your shoulders. At the same time, an opportunity to bring in something new to building those foundations and patching them up. What do you think about that, Mark?
Yeah, for sure. Like Saturn being in Pisces is trying its best to anchor everything. Everything. Of course, a lot of stuff could kind of float away. Yeah. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. If Saturn wasn't there, Saturn wasn't there,
stuff could just play out there in the ether in some kind of way.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, of course. There's something quite beautiful about that. But Saturn is really trying to get everything anchored. And I often think that Saturn wants you really to take responsibility for what's going on here. It's always like, this is in your hands, guys. You have to do something with it. It's trying to concrete something, and for you to actually do something with this energy. So if you have a dream, or you have an aspiration, or you have a feeling of, oh, I've always wanted to do that, and you've got this whole lot of Pisces energy happening in your life that actually makes you feel that, possibilities are there. Mm-hmm. The Saturn energy is about, okay, so what are you going to do about it? You've got to work at this, that, don't you?
Yeah.
You've got to buckle down. Like if you want to write a book, you've got to start writing it. You've got to get,
It doesn't just happen on its own.
Exactly.
I think a lot of times too, sometimes the Piscean story is, if one were to walk out the door and stuff just happens and they're a Jupiter world sign, they get lucky, right? And I get it happens once in a while, but this is planet Earth. Most of the visions and dreams that you've seen in the world, how this world has turned, it started with a vision and dream and in a place of inspiration, but it needed to be put into form, and that's where Saturn comes in. It's interesting. We go through the solar system. Here's Jupiter, right? Mm-hmm. Jupiter has the vision, and the next planet afterwards is Saturn. It's kind of like, hold up, we need to capture this vision and create some boundaries and some rule sets for us to make the vision become reality.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's going to be a really, really interesting time. I'm actually looking forward to it. It's got a really lovely feeling on one level about work that can really happen in quite a visceral way, work that can happen in a way that feels like it's coming from internal areas, inside you, and, your inner voice kind of stuff, and, that feeling of calling and all that kind of thing comes into it. But on another level, it's not going to let you go, it's not going to let you just live in that land. It's going to try its best to actually bring all that to some kind of fruition or some kind of concrete form.
Yeah.
You still got to do it. You still got to work at it.
Yeah, and
put your finger out.
It's interesting too, because around this time we were talking about Mercury also being in Aries, going retrograde and back into Pisces. Mercury being the ruler of the South Node in Virgo, and then we pay attention. Jupiter's in Gemini right now, the ruler of the Node. So the mind story, the ideas, thoughts, and processing story is key to all this, and it's like, do we trail off? Are we scattered and we have multiple irons in the fire, but nothing gets done? And I think it's during this eclipse time, if you have things coming in and things that you're letting go, you have retrograde planets. From a way, if you can step out and look at it, is like, oh, this is a chance for me to clean out the closet of my mind, possibly, and to bring in things slowly and to work and tweak with it. It might not just happen in one moment, but the flow between North and South Node and what could happen, down the line, by clean house, clean mind.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's a very cerebral, staccato, clean house, clean mind. But at the same time, we have clean house, clean mind. We're opened up for the inspiration, right? For the meditative thought or idea or the steps to take afterwards. And this is one way I look at it when it comes to balancing the two. So, again, Mark, I'm going to be real with you here and people watching, from the work that I've seen you do and how you talk about things and teach, whatever, you come from a place that is grounded and that has possibility, and reminding people on your videos, your clients, that they have choice and autonomy, and that you can use the transits, understand the transits, and all of it coming from a place of love and compassion. And I know that about you, Marc. You live in that. That's your life, and I've seen it in what you do. So, again, I'm bringing that up to you because, to me, that's end game. With this, and we get caught up in the world's wild and it's crazy. And it's like, what do we do? And how do we solve this? And we're stressed, all these kinds of things. And I don't know. I take the approach, and it might sound like it's coming from the 60s or whatever part. But people did this in the past in other creative eras, artistic eras, that their way of moving through places was through the imagination and through creativity, all based on love and compassion.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
So,
Thank you for bringing that up, Nicholas. I appreciate the fact that you've noticed that. But to me, it's not about just talking into that kind of energy because it makes you kind of feel warm and fuzzy. I mean, that's a little part of it, but it's more about love is the only thing that works. Mm-hmm. Love is the only thing that works. Anything that comes from love, anything that comes from that place will work. It's, it is the energy that we're all made from. It's the energy of where we come from. And when we approach anything from that place, it is going to work for us. It will definitely work for us. So it's basically a common sense thing for me. It makes me feel that, if you want something to work and it's not working, you've got to come from that place. So my work has always had that involved because I can't see it working any other way.
Yeah, there's no choice. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. Yeah.
That's it. It's kind of like, well, can I approach it from a different angle? I suppose I could, but it probably wouldn't work quite as well.
Sure. And it's a funny way you say it that way too, because there's these feelings part, but then you're like, that doesn't work. That kind of goes back to like a little bit of the Saturn aspect of things, and even the Virgo thing of the tasks. I again, with something like this too, I always like to say things, as my followers know, that I always try to come back to central places where one feels empowered and connected to themselves and feel like they can do something. And I guess that goes to, sum it up too about the service part that you brought up, because there is a love and compassion place, but I think it's inherent in us. Once we are centered and we feel called to something, it's only natural for us to share that with the world or to help the world. And it might not even, it seems like work, but actually it's not even work. I think it becomes enjoyable and pleasurable, especially when it has to do, it's reciprocal. And you might have to do tasks or whatever, but it's not a hassle. Yeah, exactly. It's coming from a love place. It's just something different. And I think it feels the reciprocal part is everyone's cup is filled, at the same time.
So this has never felt like work to me.
No.
Ever. Even when I sit down, I think, oh God, here I've got all this to do and that to do, and I've got classes and I've got this and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, it's kind of like my joy, the overflow of joy that I feel, always usurps it. It always comes out on top. So I'm starting to understand it too, my world, Marc. It's just like, it's almost where too, if I found a way to like, I'm not going to do this anymore because I had a bad day, and then I supposedly quote unquote quit, that I would walk down the street next couple of days and something would happen. I'd be right back in the mix. I'm like, okay, I get it now. I got to do this. Marc, I appreciate you with your thoughts and coming on, the channel today and to talk about things, so on and so forth. Where can people find out more about you? You can come to or go on to sydneyastrologyschool.com. That's my school, but a lot of the stuff that I do is through that. Readings are hard at the moment, only because I'm booked pretty much all year now. So if you don't mind waiting that long, you can also contact marclaurensonAstrology.com, which is my business site where I do my bookings for readings and other things I do as well. So sydneyastrologyschool.com or marclaurensonAstrology.com are my two websites. I have a YouTube channel as well, Sydney Astrology School YouTube channel. I'm also on Facebook as Marc Laurenson and Sydney Astrology School. And I've got a Instagram as Sydney Astrology School as well.
Yeah.
So you can catch me all over the place.
Yeah, no, you're there. You're there. It's amazing. Again, like I've seen, it's always amazing these modern times where you see somebody, you're looking at the camera and you think you know them, like you all do with me, the emails that you send me, and then you meet somebody in real life, in person, and it just solidifies things. And like, and then you're like, oh, they're not fake, they're real, and they're genuine, and it is real. So, and those simple things, by the way. I guess to end it this way, you don't have to do this out there, but you know how I preach about this, about living through one's senses and how important it is at one point when you feel comfortable to go into physical spaces with a person or people that you can trust to do the physical interaction, a conversation, you're having dinner, I think is more important than ever because it is natural, it brings inspiration and solutions. But in the end, we all just want to be seen, heard, and confirmed. It's natural, and it's okay to do that. So I'm on the video that way, on that note. That's how what this channel is all about. I know you roll your way too, Mark.
Yeah.
So
That's beautiful, Nicholas. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Beautiful way to round things up.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Patreon members, you're going to see this before whatever. My channel members, I got some other things coming down the pipeline, as I always do. And thanks for watching.
Thanks, everybody.